Good morning, campers. How are you? Good. Come on, let's get a little enthusiasm going. Good morning, campers. How are you?
Really good.
Thank you for joining me for a few minutes. I'm going to give you just a little quick and dirty training here. I want to just tell you a bit about my background so you know who I am, this weird guy standing up who looks like Jerry Seinfeld. I run a company called Spark Presentations, and basically my company's job is to help our clients thrive by making their presentations more compelling and getting them out to more people. A big slice of that pie is working trade show booths as booth presenters, which I'm doing here for Home Depot, as well as doing the booth training, which you're getting a little taste of right now. We do corporate MC work, which Paul knows all about because we used to do a traveling show together for AMD and Microsoft, and we do auctioneering and other stuff as well. Since 1998, I have worked at over 200 trade shows as a presenter, as a booth staffer, as a trainer. That's why I have so much gray hair, because this is exhausting. But it's taught me a thing or two, and I just want to share the things I've learned with you. So first, I know you know the main reason you're here, right? If you had to sum it up in one word, what would it be? What's the L word? Leads. I think I heard it here somewhere. But I want to see if you could pick out 9 other opportunities trade shows offer that are almost universally missed by exhibitors. Anybody got any ideas?
Consumer feedback.
Consumer feedback, great one. Matt, thank you. What was it?
Brand recognition.
Brand recognition, excellent. Any others? Why are you here? What's the purpose of buying the booth space and flying into the city and showing up and standing here for 3 days?
Sales.
All right, sales is a good one too. Here's some ones that I've managed to put down. This one is along the lines that it's Matt, right? Yeah, that Matt just said. There are different ways to do sales. For example, you can meet up with current and past leads, people you already have in your pipeline, and you can accelerate a sales process by talking to them here, finding out where they stand, answering objections, and maybe facilitating a sale right here on the show floor. You can pitch your customers. Talk to people who are your customers right now. How's your experience been with us? What could we do better for you? And you may uncover a new need that you can solve and pitch them on that need, and you're talking to somebody who's already connected with you. You can even pitch competitors' customers. Think about that. There are people walking around the show floor who are doing business with your competitors. What a great chance to interview them. How's your experience been with them? What do you like? What don't you like? What could we do better for you? There are opportunities. Next up, you can market to your industry, right? This is the place where if you have new products, new services, like the 2% rebate system, right? New technologies, this is where you unveil them, because this is the area of mass concentration where everybody in your industry is for a few days. You can boost awareness of yourselves in the industry. Home Depot doesn't have that challenge, but for new services, this is a great place to boost them, and it's a great place to improve or change your reputation. Beyond that, you can get noticed by the press. Now, when I made this slide, the press was a certain number of limited people who had press credentials. Who's in the press now? Everybody with a smartphone and a YouTube or a Facebook or a LinkedIn or a Twitter account. That's right. Everybody matters, and anything you say to anybody on a show floor can reverberate through the internet, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, in a positive way or in a negative way. Finally, you can do a lot of researching and connecting here. You can discover other market trends, innovations by going and listening to speakers. You can meet thought leaders. If there are people giving presentations here you've always wanted to meet, this is the place where you can go up, introduce yourself, and shake their hands. And finally, you can scout competitors. So all of these are missed opportunities by most trade show booths. I just wanted to give you an idea of the scale of things you can accomplish in this space today and tomorrow without having to move off this carpeting that most companies never even know exist. So I want to ask you to do a little math in your head. I want to find out what a single attendee is worth to you over their life cycle. So you don't have to tell me what it is. You don't have to share it publicly. But in your mind, I want you to imagine that if you could pick up a single attendee who represents your best customer, these are the people who have an urgent need for what you provide. They have the budget, they have the authority to buy it, or they can influence the decision maker in their company, right? And then if they bought from you, you would make money from the original sale. You might make it from installation, from training, from upgrades, from cross-sells. You'd get referrals from them. They would bring new customers to you without you having to market yourself. And then imagine that for the entire life cycle of that customer, which might be 6 months, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I want you to come up with a ballpark number in your head of what that customer would be worth to you, what that attendee represents in potential life cycle sales. Does everybody have a ballpark number in their head? All right, I'm just curious. You don't have to tell me what the number is, but raise your hand if it's north of $10,000. Raise your hand if it's north. Nobody else is north of 10 grand? Yeah? George and Claire, yours is north of 10 grand. How about 20 grand? How about 30 grand? Do I hear 30 grand? 30 grand, anybody? 30 grand, good. How about 50? 50 grand, anybody? Randy, you want to go 100? 100, 200? Randy, you're going to pop right up to 7 figures, aren't you? Okay. You don't have to tell me what the number is, but I want you to imagine right now that that number is written in magic marker on the forehead of every single attendee you see walking down these aisles. That's what they represent in potential business to you. Okay? So how do you do it? When you see those people and you recognize their potential to you and their value to you, you have to figure out, well, how do I pull them over to the booth? What matters most to them? And there's industry research for trade shows that shows something very interesting. They've done research on the factors that most influence whether an attendee becomes your lead. Whether you can translate somebody who's walking down the blue aisle into somebody whose badge you scan and you can follow up with them, and when you do, they want to hear from you. Now, I want to ask you, I'm going to give you 3 options, what you think is the most important factor to influence whether an attendee becomes your lead and actually delivers that amount of money that you have in your head. 1, is it the booth itself, the booth design, the signage, any of that? Do you think that's the most important? Or do you think it's the company name and reputation? Is that the most important? Or is it the human being standing in the booth? Who thinks it's the booth design and signage? Raise your hand. Who thinks? Who thinks it's the company name and reputation? Raise your hand. I'll give you another option. Who thinks it's the products and services in the booth? Raise your hand. Maybe, kind of, sort of. That's okay, Matt. Who thinks it's the people? Industry research shows, on average, if you pluck an average attendee out of the ether for all the trade shows out there, and you say what influences them the most, the research shows that all those things I just mentioned are important and each plays a key role, but on average, what makes or breaks an attendee's decision more than any other single factor to become your lead, to listen to you when you try to follow up with them, to consider buying your products, the single most important factor is you. You make or break a potential sale with an attendee more than anything else around you in the booth. And I mention this because it's easy to feel in a booth like this, and really in any booth, like a museum guard, right? It's such a gorgeous booth. It's so beautifully designed. Your job is just to stand there and tell everybody the bathroom's over there and no flash photography and otherwise stay out of the way, right? So they can see all the beautiful products and the beautiful booth design and the graphics and everything else. In fact, all those things exist to serve you. You are the stars of your show. Everything here is to facilitate your interaction with the attendees. So, how do you do that? Well, let's talk about some behaviors you can engage in. Many of these you're probably doing already to ensure that when those people walk down the aisle who represent all that money to you, that you can start to draw them in, and you'd be amazed at how little effort this takes. So, for example, if you want to say this, in other words, if you want to have a behavior that signals to an attendee who might be 50 yards down the aisle, they're too far away to talk to, if you want to engage in a behavior that says to them, hey, come on over, talk to me, I'm the most interesting thing you can do right now. For example, if you wanted to say, is to send the message to them 50 yards down the aisle, I'm here to help attendees, where should you stand? Come on. Edge of the booth, absolutely, right on or against the aisle, right? If you stand in the middle, what does that tell people? What's the subtext of where you're standing?
You gotta come to me.
Yeah, I'm not going to make an effort to reach out to you. If you want me, come and get me, right? If you were an attendee worth all that money, worth 7 figures to Randy, would you bother with that? There are 85,000 other things to do in this room, right? And all of them will seem easier at that moment. How about if you want to communicate the idea to somebody you won't get ganged up on? If you come on over and talk to me, I'll make sure it's a nice, easy conversation. You won't feel intimidated. Should you be standing alone or in a group? Alone. Why alone, Matt?
It's just less intimidating.
Yeah. I always think of the high school lunchroom, right? Would you ever want to go and interrupt a bunch of people sitting together in a little group all facing each other? No, it's intimidating. But again, you're here to talk to them, and they're here to give you all that business that you imagine they have, right? And the way to do that is to say to them, I'm going to stand by myself to let them know, to signal to them that I am open for conversation. If you want to tell them that they will have your full attention, should you be holding anything in your hands? This is a tricky one. Yeah? My general answer to this is that anything that's available to the attendee, which means product samples, collateral, prizes, pencils, I mean anything that is available to them, sure, hold it as a teaser. But anything that's not available to them that they may see as a potential distraction, which means what's the #1 culprit? Phones. When I talk to somebody holding a cell phone in their hand, I'm distracted because I'm just waiting for the thing to go off, which will force them to make a choice in that moment about whether they want to keep talking to me or deal with the person trying to get their attention on the phone, and there's a good chance I'll lose, right? So even the presence of the phone can distract me and makes me think, you know what, I'll go across the aisle, talk to somebody else instead. How about this? If you want to communicate that you're well rested or energized, should you be eating or drinking anything? George, if you saw Randy, if you were 50 yards down the aisle, you represented 7 figures, and you saw Randy, and he was standing in the booth like this, chugging coffee, what would the subtext be to that? What would you think in your head about him? Yeah, he's got to wake up. He's tired. He's not 100%. Would you want to waste your 7 figures talking to a guy who's not 100%? All right, so just drinking coffee, a behavior that is totally innocuous in every other area of life, here on the show floor, when you're on display, it has meaning. And people will use it. They will make an interpretation. They will make a decision about you just based on the fact that you're drinking coffee. And that may kill a 7-figure deal. You'll never even know it existed because they'll never even know to come and talk to you. If you want to say, I'm eager to talk with you, what expression should you wear in your face? This is the easiest question in the training. Come on, guys, seriously. Show me. Oh, you all have such nice smiles, all of except Matt, who looks shocked for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah, smile, right? Nobody wants to come over and talk to somebody who looks angry. Who'd want to engage in that conversation? Here's the last one in the set. This is my favorite. If you want to say, I want you to get to know me, where should you put your badge? Yeah, Matt, you're exactly right. Why did you say right shoulder?
When you shake someone's hand, they can read your
That's
badge.
exactly right. I am so impressed because when you shake someone's hand, hey, George, I'm Andy Sachs. Nice to meet you. My line of sight goes to his right shoulder. His line of sight goes to my right shoulder. You want to put your badge where they're already looking. If you can't do right shoulder, you want to try to put it somewhere near your face so that as they're looking at you, they see your name, face name, face name. Now, these badges are great because they attach in 2 spots, but most trade show badges that attach in the middle, what constantly happens with them? Flip around. I just spent 3 days immediately before this show at a show in Las Vegas, and that happened. Drives me nuts. The badge has one job, and that's to tell people your name, and if it's flipped around, your name disappears. So make sure that your badge is visible. One way to bring it up toward your face is to tie a knot in the back, nice and simple. And if you have name tags for your company that work separately from the badge, absolutely, put them up towards your right shoulder, your right collar. All right. Let's talk about the questions you can ask to start a conversation. Let's imagine that you have done a good job. You've drawn that person over, your prime prospect, representing the 7-figure potential sale. How do you start a conversation with them? It's a little bit awkward, right? They're a stranger, you're in this sort of forced environment. Well, let me give you some ideas for question conversation starters, and if you have your own, I'd love it if you contribute those as well. I would say that the first couple questions is really just about engaging them, starting a little conversational flow, getting the ball rolling, establishing some trust. So these questions are nice, easy softball questions. If they're holding something in their hand that looks interesting, where'd you get that, right? Immediately you're shifting the conversation away from you, your company, and your products, and you're talking about them. And people love to talk about themselves. You've all noticed that. Next, you could say, hey, what's caught your eye on the show floor? I've been standing in this spot for a day and a half. I haven't really gotten a chance to walk around. What do you think is interesting? Their answer will tell you about what they're focused on in the show. If they spend the whole time talking about free stuff, what are they interested in? Free stuff. If they talk the whole time about a particular product category, what are they interested in? Good. Listen and analyze those answers. Here's another question. What can I help you find? Now, this is a very different question than can I help you? Can I help you, I think, is the worst question in retail. It's a closed question. When somebody says, hey, George, can I help you? What's your answer?
No, I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. No, leave me alone. And the conversation's over. There's nowhere for it to go. If you switch the wording around to say, what can I help you find? It's an open question, and it invites people to think about and provide an answer, even if the answer is something outside the booth, even if they're just looking for the bathroom. And here's another good one. How'd you get started in this industry? People love to talk about themselves. I'm going to bet that nobody at 5 years old said, I want to be involved in wire nuts or, right? I didn't say I want to be involved in trade show training. Everybody has an interesting story about how they got there. Everybody loves to talk about themselves. And you'll hear some really cool stories if you just ask the question. Next up. After you've asked a couple of questions, you've established some trust, you can ask what I call collection questions. This is to collect information from them that'll help you do your job. You could say, for example, they may say, I'm interested in such and such, or we need help with this process, right? You could say, tell me about how you do it today, and let them tell you the story of their pain points currently. Oh, we have the system, it takes all day. First we have to do this, I have to send a guy out to get that. We're always missing 3 parts. We have the wrong size. Let them express all their frustration and vent everything to you. All of that becomes the before picture, and you're going to provide the after picture. Next, you could say, what's your role in finding a new solution? I see you here looking around for options. What's your role in picking one? What are you asking when you ask this? Are you a decision maker? Or are you a decision influencer? Or are you just a guy walking around? So you'll know their value to you. Next up, what would your perfect product look like? Sometimes you talk to people who say, well, I don't really know what I want, right? I don't really know the terminology. I don't know this versus that. And just say, hey, back up, forget everything. Just tell me. If you could build a product from scratch, what would it look like? And let them build it. Let them design it for you. And then it's easy, because once they tell you what they're looking for, you tell them what your products have in common with their vision, and you've made the sale, right? Next up, what would you change about your current product if you could? This is a great one to ask if they already have a product that came from somewhere else. And they may say, oh, I'm already using so-and-so's product. That may feel like it's the end of the conversation, but here's a follow-up question. That's great. I'm glad you're working with a good product. They make a great product, and I'm glad you're happy with it. I'm just curious. I just am always asking about this. What would you change about it if you could? I have an iPhone. In fact, I use all Apple products, and I'm reasonably happy with them. But if somebody from Samsung said, hey, what would you change about your iPhone if you could? I got a laundry list of stuff I could feed to them. And that's market research that is, I bet, unavailable anywhere else in your annual life, right? All right. So let's imagine that you've asked 2 or 3 or 4 of these questions, you've generated some conversation, you've learned some stuff. Here is the golden moment. This is the moment where you not only show them that you've been listening, that you care about them, that you want to know about them. This is the moment where you prove that you get it. You ask a confirmation question that picks up all the information, rearranges it, and feeds it back to them. Watch this. Let me see if I've got this, Randy. You're looking for this type of product or service that has this feature, and this feature, so you can reach your goal of shaving 2 hours off your workday. Randy, do I have that right? Now, what you will hear is your own voice talking and the background of the show. But what Randy will hear in that moment is angels singing. Because somebody in a trade show booth listened to him and got his problem. You all have been to trade shows. You know how rarely that happens, right? Right? Randy is just being carried away now on wings of joy, right? Right? I can see the love on your face. Excellent. And by the way, here's a catch-all question. If you have somebody who doesn't seem to want to stop and talk to you, they just want to blow by. I learned this when I was working for Intel at the Consumer Electronics Show. They had a giant booth. A lot of people just walk right through it in an attempt to get somewhere else because it's right near the escalator and the door and everything in Las Vegas. So we would have a lot of people blow by as we tried to engage them. And somebody says, no, I'm late for a meeting, or I'm going to the Microsoft booth. And you think, well, that's it, right? Here's a question you can still ask as they pass you. I understand you're in a hurry. May I point out something to come back for? Yeah, I guess you can. About half the time you ask this, the attendee will stop in their tracks, turn around, and let you have 10 seconds to pitch them on something. Great. When you have a chance, come on back to the booth. We have a wire nut contest. You can guess how many wire nuts are in here and win a $500 gift card. We have a rebate program. If you're not signed up yet, you're wasting 2% back on all your purchases. And we have product presentations on stage every hour. Come check them out. Thanks. The bathroom's over there. Just like that. About half the time we did this at Intel, those people would decide that whatever they had to do before was not so important after all, and they stayed. And a lot of the people who left thanked us before they left for doing them the favor of informing them of what's in the booth, and they really did come back later to talk to us. So a lot of those people you think are lost causes, you can save them with this one question. Any other questions you ever used that you found work for you that you want to share with the group? All right. Let's go on. I'm going to give you a few more tips and then we'll wrap up. If you're doing a demo, if you're having a conversation, these are just some little odds and ends that may help you have a stronger, longer conversation that will have a greater impact on your prospect. All right, first, be clear. It's really easy in any industry to assume that everybody speaks the language, everybody knows all the key terminology. I have found over 200 trade shows that's rarely true. A lot of people are newbies. A lot of people know this aspect of your industry, but not the part that you're involved in, and they're too embarrassed to stop you and say so when you're talking. So be nice and clear. Don't use a $10 word when a $1 word will do just fine. Define the terms you use plain English, and if you see a quizzical look or if they look down at the floor suddenly, stop and say, would you like me to explain this for you? You'll do them the favor of the day for them. Next up, be hands-on. If you've got products like the flashlight, the first product in the presentation, don't hold it and show it to them. Give it to them. Let them hold it. Let them play with it. You keep your hands behind your back and you walk them through a tour verbally. You tell them where to press and what to push. But let them have it in your hands. There are studies that show that when somebody holds an object for as little as 30 seconds, they form an emotional attachment to it that makes them want it more. They're willing to pay more for it, and they're less willing to give it back at the end. You want to create that attachment to your products. Next up, be colorful. People don't like learning with what we call data dumps, which is when you throw a bunch of product specs on their head and they just sort of bathe them in it, right? They like stories. That's how our brains are wired to learn. Tell them success stories about people in similar situations who've used your product. Tell them predictions about, what people will be using in the industry 5, 10 years from now. Give them a little inside scoop about the product launch. Share with them information that they couldn't get on your website. That's what makes them feel special. Be positive. Don't be mean to anybody for anything. Don't contradict any statements an attendee makes, even if they're wrong. Don't denigrate any of your competitors. Don't be dismissive. A couple of reasons, right? First, everybody is a member of the press, and anything you say can and will go up online and will live there forever, and there's nothing you can do about it. So don't say anything you're not willing to stand by for the rest of your life, right? Second, in my experience, denigrating other people just makes you look bad. What I say instead is if somebody says, oh, I work with this competitor, I say, great, so-and-so's a great company, they make a great product. However, based on what you've told me, I think we may have a better fit for you, and here's why. Nice, easy move. And finally, be honest. If you don't know, you don't know. Nobody expects you to answer every question ever invented in the industry. In fact, I think it gives you a great opportunity to follow up with somebody, right? You could say, hey, I don't know. I'd like to research this and get back to you. Can I call you? Can I email you? Now, when you follow through, you've proven to be somebody who keeps your promises, and that's a person people want to do business with. All right, guys, go man your posts. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I appreciate it. If you have questions, if you want to talk more, I'll be here today and tomorrow. Thanks a lot.